Now we have the congressman from New York's 10th congressional district, Daniel Goldman. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Now, Republicans are in charge of the House, which inevitably means that we're on the path to yet another government shutdown. Is there actually any appetite among your Republican colleagues to avoid a shutdown, or is the dysfunction is breaking government the actual point here?
No, I think that's actually one of the interesting developments right now is that there does appear to be a significant portion of Republicans who do not want a shutdown. Unfortunately, because they have such a tight majority and there are enough in the party who want to burn the House down, they cannot wield enough influence to impact Kevin McCarthy in a way that can pass anything. So it will be very interesting to see, I think, over the next week or so, what the so-called moderate Republicans do, who claim not to want to have a shutdown, but who have to this point not done anything to resist the extreme MAGA wing on the right.
At every turn, we always see these same people who claim to want something, then capitulate to the farthest right members of the Republican conference. If there is a shutdown, what's your message amid what will be the inevitable scramble to blame the other side?
Well, I mean, look, the message is very clear. This House Republican Party is completely dysfunctional. They're incapable of passing any legislation, even extreme legislation that has no chance of becoming law. They do not accept the reality that even though they have a narrow majority in the House, the Senate is controlled by Democrats and the president is a Democrat. We are in divided government. You don't get everything you want in divided government. You rarely get everything you want even in unified government. Right. But the fact that they refuse to pass anything, that there's clear chaos and dysfunction over there, makes it very clear that all of the really dangerous and bad ramifications, including a $6 billion hit to the economy every week, numerous sources and resources for Americans, obviously tons of government jobs. This will have a real significant impact on our economy and on the American people. And the Republicans just don't seem to care. We are eager to avoid a government shutdown, consistent with the bill that the vast majority of Republicans voted to pass in order to raise the debt ceiling, which set the appropriations top line numbers. Now the Republicans are going back on their own bill that they agreed to and trying to cut spending even more and really dangerously.
Moving over to another source of Republican dysfunction, you've actually been a brutally effective messenger when it comes to the GOP's lack of a predicate to open an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden. Can you go over what evidence Republicans have to justify this escalation?
Well, basically, all they have is right now is two things that they point to. One is a FBI document of an interview of a confidential source who spoke to someone we now know to be the head of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, on whose board Hunter Biden served. In that document, he alleged that he paid $5 million, or I think it looks like $5 million bribe, either to Joe, Hunter, or both. The Trump Department of Justice had that information available to them when Bill Barr set up a repository for Rudy Giuliani's conspiracy theories within the Department of Justice to see if anything could be made from them. After a review by the Trump Justice Department, they found clearly that this information was not credible, and they did not pursue an investigation. Perhaps part of the reason they found it was not credible is that the source itself, after that meeting, has gone on record to say that he not only never paid a bribe, but never had a single conversation with Joe Biden. Then, in addition, they have Hunter Biden's business partner who says that that Hunter put Joe Biden on the phone approximately 20 times over a decade to say hello to some of Hunter's business partners. Therefore, they are making the allegations, and this is quite a stretch, that Joe was using his official position to help Hunter. But that same witness, their own witness, said that they never discussed business. Joe Biden never discussed business with the business associates, never discussed business with Hunter, did not know what was going on, never benefited from any of Hunter's business. So they are pinning a lot on these non-credible and very weak evidence to say that Joe Biden committed some sort of high crime and misdemeanor. And it is quite clear from the evidence they have, not only did he not commit a high crime or misdemeanor, he didn't commit a low crime or misdemeanor. He didn't commit any crime or misdemeanor.
So given the fact that there is a glaring lack of evidence here and that they knew that prior to the escalation to impeachment inquiry, what justifies that escalation?
Donald Trump. So the interesting thing about this is that these are the same allegations that Rudy Giuliani cooked up and convinced Donald Trump to try to extort the president of Ukraine to investigate. And he withheld military assistance so that he would investigate it for his own personal benefit because he thought it would be helpful in the upcoming election. He was impeached because of that after President Zelensky of Ukraine refused to do his bidding. Unfortunately, now, 4 years later, the House Republicans are doing Donald Trump's bidding. They clearly don't have the backbone of President Zelensky. And that's why, because of Donald Trump's urging and because Marjorie Taylor Greene has threatened to shut the government down if there's no impeachment inquiry, Kevin McCarthy decided to unilaterally move forward with an impeachment inquiry, even though there are a number of people within his own party who acknowledge that there is no evidence to support such an inquiry.
To what extent do you think is the point here to perpetuate a narrative that Biden is corrupt, knowing full well that these Republicans will never get fact-checked on the networks where their audiences actually get their news?
Look, that's a real problem. It's part of the reason why I have been as vociferous about calling out their lies as possible. They are lying. Their allegations have been already debunked. The prime allegation of this bribe to buy the Burisma head, and then Joe Biden urged the firing of the prosecutor general, is complete bogus. The reality is it is the opposite. And there were numerous witnesses in the first impeachment who are experts in this area, who were in Ukraine at the time with the State Department, who said that not only did Joe Biden execute official U.S. foreign policy, but by firing or urging Ukraine to fire the corrupt prosecutor general, that was actually bad for Burisma. And even their own star witness, Devin Archer, says that Burisma believed they had this prosecutor general under control. So the allegations have already been debunked. They are flat out lies. And the unfortunate reality in our media ecosphere is that too many people are hearing those lies without anyone fact checking it because the right wing media is not made up of actual journalists. They are political operatives.
So right now we've got an impeachment inquiry based on nothing. We've got a government on the verge of shutting down. None of that seems to bother Republicans, but what does seem to bother Republicans is the fact that John Fetterman wore a hoodie. Can I get your reaction to Republicans finally finding their red line?
Well, I mean, the way you just described it shows the preposterousness of focusing on that. And it is very consistent with the things that they have focused on that are either extreme ideological culture wars or are completely irrelevant to the American people. And what they are not focusing on is what actually the American people need and want and care about. And the distinction and the difference between what House Democrats did in the last Congress in passing historic legislation to rebuild our roads, bridges, and broadband, to bring back manufacturing in the United States, to keep up competitively with China, to pass gun legislation for the first time in 30 years, and to reduce climate change with the most meaningful climate investment ever, and also to reduce the price of insulin to $35. These are all things that have a significant impact on the American people. And what you are seeing from the Republicans is a focus on things that have no impact on the Republican people and a complete abdication of responsibility about the things that do.
Now, I want to focus for a moment on the issue of Biden's age, which has been a primary focus of the media, especially because, if they're going to criticize Trump for contending with 91 criminal charges, then by the laws of both sidesism, that requires that Biden be criticized for something too. So what's your reaction to these media stories suggesting that Biden's age is the biggest issue in this upcoming election?
Look, I think it is a complete red herring. Yes, he's old, but he has also made historic accomplishments. And I think there are a couple of things that have happened even this year that really point out how capable and qualified he is. The first is the way that he reacted to real improper Republican etiquette at the State of the Union. And he was quick. He was fast on his feet, and he shut them down, responded to them, and really actually moved the needle on some policy issues. The other thing that I don't think enough people understand is during the debt ceiling negotiations, it was clear that President Biden's wisdom, experience, knowledge was essential to fashioning an agreement that could raise the debt ceiling and keep our economy from cratering. And he doesn't get enough credit for that because he was not necessarily in the room to negotiate every single detail. But when you talk to the people in the White House, the people in the room negotiating that, they speak incredibly admirably about the experience and wisdom that President Biden offered. And he could see the pathway to the end in a way that most people cannot. So sure, he's old, but look at what his accomplishments are, and they're historic. So he is executing the job as well or better than anyone ever has. And so the age is somewhat of a distraction because, of course, the actual governance and results are what matters, not the age. And some people are an old 80, some people are young 80, and it is all based on the individual. And in this case, the individual has been incredibly successful.
Building on that, does it not defy logic that in an election where we all know the choice is binary, that the media narrative here that they're desperate to shoehorn in is that there is an equivalency between the fact that Biden is 80 and the fact that Trump, who by the way is 77, incited an insurrection against the seat of government for the express purpose of overturning an American election with the help of his criminal enterprise?
Well, that's obvious. But even putting that aside, Donald Trump is 77. If you listen to him speak, he is incoherent. He cannot put a coherent, sensible sentence together with any meaning. If you want to talk about age having an impact, look at Donald Trump. And that is the thing that is bewildering to me, that there's so much focus on Joe Biden's age. Donald Trump has really almost gone off the deep end. I mean, he is there with Rudy Giuliani now at this point, where it's conspiracy after conspiracy theory. There is no sense to anything that he says. It's pure grievances and revenge. And he clearly has lost his marbles and would be incapable of governing. And so I think that as this campaign moves forward, that paradox is going to become more and more apparent.
Well, in Donald Trump's defense, he is the only one warning about the prospect of World War II. So I want to give him that at least. Trump recently said that he's not worried about the threat of prison, about going to jail. But for example, if Enrique Tarrio, the former leader of the Proud Boys, if he was sentenced to 22 years in prison for a scheme that was executed for the benefit of Donald Trump, then wouldn't it lend itself to reason that the guy who inspired that effort, who led that effort, would also suffer a comparable punishment, if not worse?
Well, the way that sentencing works is it really is based on the charge. And seditious conspiracy is a much more serious charge I should say it's a charge with a much more serious punishment than what Donald Trump is charged with. But that does not mean we're talking about 22 years versus 0 years. Donald Trump, if he is convicted, will get a significant jail sentence, and he should and will go to prison if he's convicted.
We'll leave it there. Obviously, a lot to come on that front as we wait and see what happens with these prosecutions as they continue to play out and the trials that'll take up most of the first half of 2024. So with that said, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Great to be with you again.